My name is Kateřina Šepková. I am from the Research Center for Toxic Compounds in the Environment, Masaryk University, Czech Republic. And I'm here representing the communication team of the HERA project. And it's a great pleasure to welcome you all in the meeting today. We will, of course, let me just say that we will today focus on the zero pollution strategy or zero pollution ambition, and also to see how can research contribute to the policies, to implementation of EU Green Deal strategy, and also achieving the better protection of environment and human health. So with this, allow me to give floor to Lukáš Pokorný, who will open our webinar with a brief presentation, setting the scene about where we are currently in the research, but also in the part of the EU strategies. So Lukáš, floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Katka. So good morning also to all the 82 participants currently seeing the presentation, and as Katka said, I will brief you quickly on the strategies and research priorities and goals in the EU concerning what concerns the Green Deal and the Health and Environment Research Agenda project. Next slide, please. So as you surely know, the Green Deal was adopted in 2019. It is the EU ambitious roadmap actually that aims to protect, conserve and enhance the EU's natural capital, and most importantly, from the point of view of our today topic, to protect the health and well-being of citizens from environment-related risks. As you can see, it rests on several pillars, be it the climate neutrality by 2050, healthy ecosystems, but also, of course, the growth that is just inclusive. And in this sense, it is important to highlight that the Green Deal is also the European Union's contribution to the implementation of the Agenda for Sustainable Development 2030, because it contains all the three pillars of sustainable development. On the screen, you can see the mottos from the words about the Green Deal from Ursula von der Leyen, the president, and Frans Timmermans, who is responsible for the Green Deal. Now, going into specific goals that the Green Deal has for clean air and clean water, because these are the two areas that we will be looking at today from the point of research. For the clean air is the ambition to align air quality standards in the EU with the more ambitious World Health Organization guidelines, and provide support to local authorities to achieve clean air for the citizens. In the clean water area is the area that is more interconnected with other elements of the Green Deal, be it farm to fork strategy or chemicals, for example. You can see that it's the preservation of biodiversity in lakes and rivers and wetlands, reducing pollution from excess nutrients, a very important and challenging task, and a reduction of pollution from microplastics and pharmaceuticals, which is again an emerging concern that is widespread in the EU. Next slide, please. The Zero Pollution Action Plan, which is an implementing document of the Zero Pollution Ambition, that aims at creating a toxic-free environment in Europe, now rests on four main general objectives. It has just gone through the public consultation that ended on the 10th of February, and the general objectives you can see on the screen. Strengthening implementation and enforcement of current policies, improvements to the governance of pollution policies in general, and driving societal change, amongst others, using digital solutions. Digital solutions important throughout the whole Green Deal agenda as a vehicle for the implementation and for achieving the goals that are specified in the Green Deal. And last but not least is the health and environment nexus that is of interest, and that is the main priority of the health and environment research agenda, the HERA project that we will be talking in depth about today. You can see on the screen the 6 priority research goals that have been identified within the HERA interim agenda 2030. You can see that all are synergic in nature. They all cover interlinkages between the various specific areas, be it climate change and its impact on health, be it healthy lives in inclusive societies, new infrastructure and technologies to understand environmental impacts, or the improvement of health impact assessment of environmental factors, and promoting intervention research. The HERA interim research agenda, as I said, has 6 overarching research goals. There are, if you look in the agenda, that is accessible on the website. There are several sub-goals that have specifically looked at respective areas, and you can see only 3 examples of those research sub-goals on the screen. Impact of air pollution on multiple diseases, assessing the link between urbanization, climate change and health, and for example methods in soil decontamination, but there are many more of them that will be also talked about today more in depth by our speakers. That actually, and for the speakers we came up with three kickoff questions that should create a framework for our today's discussion, that we want to be as interactive as possible. So of course these questions are also for you to consider. So the first one is to what extent has science been taken into account when designing zero pollution ambition? The second question, what are current concerns and research gaps that we are facing for air, water and soil? And last but not least, what can research do in order to help achieve the zero pollution ambition? So as I said, these are the 3 framework, so to say, questions for our speakers that will be introduced by Kateřina. And over to you, Katka, if you want to introduce our speakers for today. And thank you very much for your attention. And over to you, Katka.
Thank you very much, Lukáš, for the presentation, setting up the scene where we are in terms of the preparing the strategy and policies at the EU side, and also bringing in what we have been doing in the HERA project, that is really looking in consultations with stakeholders from the environment, health and climate change nexus on how to improve our lives, how to achieve the zero pollution ambition. But of course, we already have a lot to deal with, and it's also there are different perspectives. So I think what I would like now to ask to our 4 distinguished speakers that we have today. So we have our representative of the European Commission from the DG Environment, who is also responsible for preparation of the zero pollution strategy, Mrs. Veronica Manfredi, with us online today. We also have Sophie Perroud from the HERA, one of the leading civil society organizations in the European Union, that is also looking at the health effects of environmental pollution. And then we also have two representatives of the research community, Åke Bergman from the Stockholm University, who is also participating in the HERA project, and Martin Scheringer, who is very well known researcher in the field of pollution effects on environment and health. So I would like to welcome all four speakers to the panel and ask them to join in, if possible, with their camera and microphone ready. And we can go to the first, we will put back the questions that were prepared. And I would like to ask, first of all, because of course we heard that there was a long-term consultation at the Commission side, not only on the roadmap for the zero pollution ambition, but also more specifically on the zero pollution strategy. And we know that this consultation was closed down 2 weeks ago, but it would be very useful, I think, for all of us. And there is more than 100 participants today in the call, in the webinar. So I would like to turn first to Veronica Manfredi to ask her if she could share what is now current thinking of the European Commission and what were the inputs received on the zero pollution ambition preparations. So Veronica, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sevkova, for giving me the floor. It's really exciting to be part of this meeting today, and I may already welcome very much the HERA engagement on topics which go to the heart of what we're trying to achieve with the Zero Pollution Action Plan. This is the correct name of the communication on which we're currently working. You're absolutely right. The public consultation closed on the 10th of February. We are very happy to have received over 700 replies from basically across all member states and a very wide range of stakeholders. The analysis of the replies is ongoing, so I will not be able to share, in a very, very granular manner exactly all the outcome. But what I can tell you in a nutshell is that yes, there is very strong public support, and it's important to note that this support comes not only from citizens but also from business representatives for having a very solid agenda looking at the nexus between environment and health. So I can only testify to that. I can testify also to the fact that there are areas where clearly the stakeholders, the respondents to the public consultation have been clear in stating that they see the need for more EU-level action, and this goes more for the areas related to marine pollution, whereas it's interesting to note that on other types of pollution, I think of noise as the emblematic example, the respondents rather point to the fact that more action is needed at a local level. So very interesting granularity of replies when it comes to the correct level of governance to do what, where. I can testify to the fact that essentially, if I were to sum it up for a young child, I would say it seems to me that the respondents say we understand that pollution is very serious in terms of human health and ecosystems impact, so bad for us, bad for the animals, bad for the planet as such, yet we still don't feel so well informed as we could and should in terms of what happens really in the place where we live, what action can we take, and this matches very much with our finding. By the way, comparatively, we also see difference between the level of knowledge that citizens have when it comes to air pollution versus water pollution. There are types of pollution which citizens feel more informed versus others. Apologies, but I have to put again my headphone because we seem to have an hiccup with another member of the family working online, as I suppose this happens in many households those days. Voila, I'm back with you. Apologies again for this hiccup. And what is interesting to note is indeed that, okay, different levels of information, but somehow the nexus about if I know that potentially the air quality in my area is not really well, what happens next? What can I do? Where do I go? Which concrete measures to take? And this also points to something that we've been discussing at length during the ad hoc meeting we held both with member states and stakeholders on the 10th of February, where everyone was pleading for better cross-cutting actions between the environmental agenda and the concrete actionable rights of citizens to better health. So the communication between the communities dealing with environmental protection and the community dealing with public health protection, and this of course in alliances with business world that is also facing an enormous transformation in the name of the Green Deal, climate neutrality, zero pollution, and other objectives we are pursuing together. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for sharing with us at least the first glimpse on what was the feedback that you received. And of course, zero pollution ambition or zero pollution action plan that is now currently being prepared. If I may, just because when reading, the materials that were for consultation, we of course read on the roadmap that there are several focuses that the zero pollution action plan will have. One of them is, of course, to improve the governance of combating the pollution as is currently embedded in the different pieces of the EU legislation. Then the next one is also place some focus on enforcement of the measures that are or will be in place. But what was really interesting for us is, of course, when there was a, let's say, part that looked at the evidence. In the consultation, you mentioned, or the survey mentioned that, yes, on one hand, there is a sufficient evidence for, there is evidence that pollution is, of course, a worldwide problem, European scale problem, that it brings serious concerns to the citizens and also to the policy and decision makers, and that needs to be tackled well. But what is interesting to us from the research perspective is that we think that the research can very much contribute to not only communicating the risks, but also bringing in the solutions, like what can I do at the individual level. And we sadly seem not to be seeing that yet reflected in the documents that were put forward. And I understand in the EU it is a very complex matter to combine on one hand, the legal pillar of the issues and also making sure that there is some sort of a marriage between the knowledge that the research community is bringing in. So it would be very interesting, and I'll let you think about it a little bit because it's not an easy question. How did you take into account the science and the research input when designing the zero pollution ambition of your current planning? So
Katka, you're starting to have the echo again.
Echo again. Sorry. It looks like my headphones entire changed. So I hope it's better. Now, so I like Veronica to think a little bit, but we'll ask now Sophie if she can bring in perspectives regarding the zero pollution ambition on the process and what is new and what you would like to see covered. Sophie, the floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I'm Sophie Perroud. I'm from the Health and Environment Alliance. We're a non-for-profit organization working at EU level on actually prevention of pollution through laws. And our focus is really, towards healthy planet for healthy people. So this is where we want to go. And zero pollution ambition indeed is a tool to get there. Maybe already jumping on what you said, Katka, what can I do at the individual level? At the individual level, everyone can influence what the policymakers are doing, because this is the level we're talking about. So what we need is laws, absolutely. An ambition can only be assessed if there are concrete facts. So just to mention that, yes, indeed, there is a plan in the making. And for the plan, we at HERA, we have a very concrete request. For us, zero pollution means, first of all, zero harm from pollution to health and the environment based on science. Then At the same time, it should be zero money for pollution. And at the same time, it should be zero delay in stopping pollution. So if you allow, I will develop a little bit what that means and how we can get there. So one of the questions was science taken into account in the designing? It's too early to say this because we don't know yet. For example, on air pollution, we will see it, I hope, very soon. The way to take science into account for a zero pollution on air means aligning fully the current EU standards for clean air with WHO guidelines, which is unfortunately not the case yet. And the Green Deal for the moment is just talking about aligning more closely with the WHO guidelines. For us, it's absolutely not good enough. Of course, 400,000 premature deaths per year is not acceptable due to air pollution in Europe. So for us, this is absolutely urgent, and there is really, really, really enough science in this on this topic. So the other thing is, when we say zero harm from pollution, we have in mind specifically as well vulnerable groups. So if the zero pollution ambition is to be true, it needs to take into account ways to protect specifically those groups, because they are those suffering most from the effects of pollution. And this is at the same time, and we are in an economic crisis as well as in a pandemic, a way to work on inequality. So this is really deep, close to our hearts. But a plan is just a plan. So we want to see legislation. That's what we want to see as soon as possible because it's urgent. But there's not only legislation, there's also money. I was saying, for us, zero money for pollution, what does it mean? And this is probably another part where research actually also comes in. As we speak, member states are designing the so-called resilience and recovery plans. I never know it's resilience and recovery or recovery and resilience, but never mind, that's the actually EU recovery fund from COVID, from the pandemic. So the member states in the EU are developing plans right now to apply for that big, big money. And they are saying, okay, these are the reforms we're going to do. These are the investments that we're going to do. And as HEAL and also many other civil society members, we have been asking for conditionality for those funds. So it really means we want that zero money is invested into pollution and that all the money for the recovery and resilience is really invested into health, into better health. So that means as well environmental and climate conditionality. And there is a way, very concrete, for the Commission to actually check that this is happening, because the Commission is going to assess those plans. And very recently, the Commission published so-called guidelines or a guidance for member states to develop those plans based on something that actually is called do no significant harm. That's a concept. And those reforms and those investments from member states should do no significant harm. Well, what is a significant harm? How do you define this? So this is actually, for us, it should be zero harm, not just no significant harm. So this is a big opening right now. I don't know if we already go a little bit into the other questions, but one thing I really wanted to say to everyone here is there is space and there is a big, big need for the production of data on assessing what this is going to produce on the real world very soon. What do I mean by that? In order to have informed regulatory decisions, we need assessment of the programs. So maybe we will talk about this a bit later, but I just wanted to already mention it here. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sophie, for the inputs and raising the concerns and sharing the views. What you think is important in terms of zero pollution ambition and plan to see it. And of course, one point is to see it, and the other is to see it implemented, and also to monitor how the implementation is or isn't successful. And I think we will get there definitely. But can I now ask Martin Scheringer and Åke Bergman to join us also with their cameras. So you can click on your camera and microphone. And I think, can we also look a bit more at the current concerns from the research field? So maybe, Åke, can I ask you first, you know, when preparing the interim research agenda, we of course looked at the various research goals that were briefly introduced by Lukáš in the opening presentation. But when looking at the various matrices and achieving zero pollution ambition, you know, where do you see the research input apart from generating data? So, okay, first maybe.
Well, thank you. That's an easy question. Thank you. I think the matrices input is one side, but I would like to say that it's not, these are external exposures, and the research and monitoring is ongoing, but still there's much more to do. And actually another way of looking at both air and water pollution and discharges is actually to go to biota. And I think the depending on the type of chemicals, we are dealing with chemicals that are semi-persistent. They are not. They are stable enough to be discharged by water and air, but then they are metabolized very rapidly in humans and animals. And this has to be considered, and I would like to see more work on that. It's difficult to answer the question in the way that we do not have the zero pollution ambition yet in front of us, but that's what I would like to see.
Thank you very much. Okay, Martin, same question to you. So what do you think? What is the concern of research in terms of zero pollution ambition? What we have heard about the different matrices, and where can research contribute? Where do you think that research can contribute?
Yes, thank you, Katka. I have thought about these questions, and I would like to make 2 or 3 points. First, perhaps the most important point from my point of view is, if you want to achieve or reduce pollution and achieve zero pollution, we need to better understand where the pollution comes from. So we need to look not only at the environmental distribution and matrices where we find the chemicals, the pollutants, we also need to look at where they come from in products, in uses. And here, a very big an important example is PFAS, poly and perfluoroalkyl substances, as I guess most people know. And there are about 5,000 PFAS on the market, and it is not at all clear where they are used, in what function, or for what purpose, in what kind of technical functionality. With colleagues, I recently published a paper on PFAS uses. We were able to identify 200 uses for 1,400 of the 5,000 PFAS. So this is still a small part, but it was a tremendous effort to put this information together. And my point here is, this is really research, because the information is not just there and would have to be compiled in a routine process. It is something that has to be searched for, it has to be found, to be interpreted, to be evaluated. There's also invalid information out there, and it has to be integrated in the end. So it's really a research activity that's needed to understand where chemicals are used, how they are used, what the emissions are, and how in the end the emissions can be avoided. That's an important area where I think research is still not at all where we should be, and where research is really needed exactly in the context of the Zero Pollution Action Plan. Can I go on to my second point already, or should I?
Yes, please do. Yes.
Yes, the second point is related to an interesting experience in the POP Review Committee of the Stockholm Convention recently, because the Swiss government recently submitted a new chemical, a potential or a POP candidate to the Stockholm Convention on persistent organic pollutants. This chemical is called UV328. It is used as a plastic additive. It's a UV stabilizer. It makes plastic more resistant to UV light. and it is present in the plastic when it is used. And then plastic goes into the environment, and the chemical also enters the environment with the plastic. And then at the POP Review Committee meeting, there was a lot of discussion about what is now the mechanism of long-range transport of the additives in the plastic. And we said, as the Swiss, as the group who also supported the nomination, that of course the transport of the plastic in the global oceans, water and currents is a mechanism. But this was really debated and contested because some people said, no, that's not an established way of transport for chemicals in the environment. And then there was obviously not enough scientific evidence what the actual validity of this transport mechanism scientifically is. So here there was also a lack of scientific understanding and scientific agreement on a very important question of how a good chemical could be regulated globally. And the last point that I would like to make is agriculture and the transition to a more sustainable agriculture. Again, we all, I think, know now that there is bird decline, insect decline, a lot of important impacts going on. But what exactly are the contributions from chemicals, from pollution, and from other factors as well? And what is a plan to move into a more sustainable agriculture? We need a transition plan. We don't need just the goal, it should be more sustainable. We need something that also helps us take the steps towards this goal. So we need a transition from the current agriculture that is highly industrial and intensive to a much more kind of patchworky agriculture that has different types of farming in different areas, and where we can learn how to make agriculture more sustainable. And this is also something where the knowledge currently is not sufficient to really move in this direction. Thank you. That was what I wanted to share as a starting point, at least for discussion.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, there are also questions that are coming up. Can I please then turn again back to Veronica to the question, if she could maybe share with us to what extent was research or is research being taken into account when designing the zero pollution action plan, or how, of course we know that it has been consulted widely and that everyone had an opportunity to contribute to. But can you maybe share, what is the mechanism and what is the current thinking, if you can, of course, if you're at that stage already, how to employ research in helping you out, for example, not only in monitoring the achievements, the effectiveness of the measures that the plan will adopt, or whether, as Martin has put it, we do not only need a goal, but we need a transition plan, how to get there. And we still have, I think, in the EU, from the past uses, sometimes sound, sometimes unsound. Sometimes there is a historical heritage of old burdens that we have, the pollution in various environmental compartments. So is this going to be a part of the action plan as well? So over to you, Veronica.
How could it not, is my question to you. I mean, honestly, I wonder how on earth we could at all create, a strategy to fight pollution without research and science. So not only research and science give us the basis of what we know in terms of the harmful impact of air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution from both an health and an ecosystem perspective. And this will be reported to the level of knowledge that we currently have based on the science that we have that comes from so many reputable institutes. As you imagine, we have a particularly close relationship with the colleagues in the European Environment Agency that on their turn cooperate with a lot of research institutes across the EU, but also with the colleagues in the World Health Organization and so many other leading academia institutes that are giving us this evidence-based calling for action, which feeds also into the United Nations work. You will have seen last week the publication of an extremely interesting report by the United Nations on making peace with nature, which is all science-based. But also we are thinking and looking at research and development as the solution to many of the problems that we see, or at least as some of the reputable scientists who just spoke pointed out, on what we need to do to understand better, because it's true there are still some knowledge gaps. And what I'm happy to offer to you today as a reflection is that, as we have said, publicly in all documents published so far, so I'm not revealing any internal kitchen commission cuisine while the action plan is still being fine-tuned, of course, is that one of the deliverable will be a more integrated framework indeed for measuring. Why is it important? Because if we don't look more granularly, on the one hand, at all the various environmental compartments, but then making the linkages in terms of what we know. The example provided by, I think, by Mr. Scheringer that spoke a second ago about, you know, the persistent organic pollutant, and then you have debate about what happens with it when it's transported or not through the sea. Do we measure it or not? The problem today is we have a number, when I zoom into the European Union, we have a number of regulatory instruments. I think we have over 33 different pieces of the acquis that look into all different sorts of pollution. And as you know, for the sea pollution in particular, I would consider the Marine Strategy Framework Directive a particularly important instrument. Yet, connecting the dots and securing that the information that we capture under the acquis on persisting organic pollutants is really then becomes the focus of the attention of what we see also under the monitoring and reporting requirement of Marine Strategy Framework Directive is maybe not always, you know, made. So a part of the effort that you will see reproduced in the future communication, and of course it's just the beginning of an adventure here, is to connect all these dots. We are thinking of having, again, our colleagues in the European Environment Agency as, let's say, main consolidation partner for this future integrated monitoring report, but they will not be working in splendid isolation. They will be working hand in hand, for example, with the colleagues in the ECHA, the European Chemical Agencies. Why? Precisely for the reasons that we're mentioning now. Some of you mentioned also the case of PFAS. I mean, you have seen, we have just announced in the Chemical Strategy for Sustainability how much ultimately the goal should be to phase out the use of PFAS across the EU, unless proven to be really important for societal development, etc., etc. But the intention is one to progressively replace all hazardous chemicals with safer solutions. How do we go to safer solutions without the help of research and development? So expect the Zero Pollution Action Plan to be an action plan that, of course, is also looking at an alliance with research and development actors. And we are pleased already that in the new Horizon Europe, you will have seen, first of all, that there are basically all of the missions which have been already tabled, agreed, and for which we are now fine-tuning actions will be relevant from a pollution prevention perspective. And generally, we have a number of programs also when it comes to human biomonitoring, just to mention one, or the excellent cooperation we're developing with this world network of reputed epidemiologists in the Human Exposome Network. That is really looking into reducing harmful impact, but first of all, observing them, because again, I fully agree there are some knowledge gaps which are still there. And what the last point was on this request for a transition plan to move towards sustainable farming. We are working on that, I would say. I would claim that, of course, a lot also rests with the level of ambition of the co-legislators in redesigning the new CAP, a CAP that really has to match the level of ambition of the Green Deal objectives. But you're familiar with the farm to fork strategy. Count on the Zero Pollution Action Plan to come as something that integrates it and tries to reduce harmful impacts also from farming activity. I think of the nitrogen cycle just as the key example. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Veronica, for assuring us that the voice of researchers will be taken into account. It seems, however, that it is through perhaps the agencies. On one hand, they are natural source of information for the Commission, but I think that the research community in the EU is also very wide. And I mean, as I probably didn't mention it at the start, but this first webinar on Zero Pollution Action Plan or Zero Pollution Strategy or Ambition is the first of series that we would like to do throughout this year, especially to look into the how can we use the research more to arrive at really to the solutions to to bring in the improvements. And I see Åke has a burning point here, and I actually was going to ask you, Åke, to intervene at this point, because I'm quite sure that you wanted to react to what Veronica said, and there will be more webinars, more discussions held, and as maybe as a side note, we are working hard to get deeper into the interim agenda that we have produced so far, to finalize the document towards the end of this year, so that we really can outline the priorities that are matching the needs on the policy side. So we are taking all this simultaneous development into account. It's not easy. We are also having a lot of consultations ongoing, but we look for the input from the stakeholders. So, okay, I give you the floor, and I would also like to invite our participants in the call, our spectators in the call, if they wish to ask some questions to our participants, please either use the chat or raise your hand and I will give you the floor. Okay, over to you first.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, unfortunately, we know quite a bit about some very few chemicals, and so much has been reactive. I've been in the business for soon 50 years, and we are still reactive to such an extent. So I would like to see the zero pollution ambition actually to be proactive and look into actually making us more prepared for the future, because what we have seen in this COVID time is that we haven't been prepared at all. And this is really what is needed, and this is a major research field actually to work along that line. So it's just a short notes from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sophie, you're asking for the floor. Sophie.
Thank you very much. Yes, I couldn't agree more, actually. And there are a few principles I think we probably need to emphasize a little bit. PFAS, definitely, that's a big topic right now. And maybe good to mention again and again and again, when it comes to health, we want legislation based on hazard. We say it again, but I think it's just really good to say. One thing to keep in mind, there's a lot we already know. So the effects, the health effects, is one part of the scientific questions, but the other question that it's really burning actually right now is about what is a non-essential use, because we need to get out of those uses. When I was saying zero delay, probably that's the most important part actually of this zero pollution ambition, the speed of the transition. We don't have time. Look at the generations coming in. I mean, we just can't afford polluting the next generations, even if they're not even conceived. Can you imagine that pollutants today are already polluting people who are not even conceived yet, right? So this is just really urgent. Defining non-essential uses of chemicals, for example, and we just don't allow them, and that's it. And because this is the way to go forward. So maybe building also what was already said, we definitely need the steps. So research on health effects is one thing, but research of the speed of getting out of pollution is really what we need right now. And I was mentioning tools that we might need when we talk about timing, tempo, speed of things. There are a few, critical moments where data is needed. So right now we're at the beginning, as everybody said. Maybe it would be wonderful. It would actually be wonderful if in 1 year time we already had data on the health benefits of the Green Deal, assessing whether we have benefits, yes or no. And the next step, just to keep it on everybody's radar, are the next EU elections, because ultimately we're talking about holding people accountable for the decision-making processes. And the next EU elections are in 2024. And what we are really asking everybody is, we want to have the health benefits seen on the ground by those elections. That means for air pollution, that we absolutely need the urgent update of the EU legislation, not only to be proposed, negotiated, but also implemented, so that in 2024, actually, we see the reductions that we're talking about. Thanks.
Thank you, Sophie. I see a question from the audience. Florian Schulz, you've raised your hand. Please identify yourself and you can speak. Florian.
Thank you, Katka. It's Florian Schulze from the European Center for Environmental Medicine, and I would like to thank you, Sophie, for her call to stop using all kinds of chemicals which we have already the knowledge for, and to have a strict one. And we are following the exposome network, and we're following the human biomonitoring project, and our goal is we are aiming for the establishment of environmental medicine, since the analysis the human biomonitoring project is doing is showing the proof of all kind of chemicals which we can find in the population right now. If Marike Kolossa saying that we have now we can identify 300 chemicals with a proof of harm in each person. That's the media, and we have well-known chemicals like mercury. We can find in well, there were studies in 1/3 of the newborns, the European newborns, and we can find those also in the patients. Carmen Novella said at the preparatory workshop for the strategies, he said like there's an increasing number of chronic diseases already now, and we have a decrease of fertility, and there is a connection between chemicals and these diseases. So from our point of view, we are asking what can we do with the people who are suffering from chronic diseases already right now. We have a network of clinical physicians who are doing the same analysis like the human biomonitoring is doing. The same laboratories are testing blood and urine, and they are proving, for example, elevated levels of mercury still in people with mercury fillings, with dental amalgam fillings. So what we are asking for, and this is now in the legal process, is that there should be like this, you made the use of this no harm principle when you do the impact assessments right now. I don't know if this is already out, but we also are asking for this, being in consequence. And if you have in the Commission, you have this rule that you should substitute a product with another product with less harm. I think this should be implemented.
Okay, thank you, Florian. Thank you very much. Do you wish to respond, Veronica, to the items raised? Perhaps over to you, Veronica.
With pleasure, I must say, because I mean, first of all, this proactivity which has been called for seems to me to be perfectly enshrined, first of all, in the chemical strategy for sustainability, because we have moved to a notion, as you know, of safe and sustainable by design. So putting all the burden at design level. And you will see exactly the same focus on reversing really the complete focus on pollution prevention at source in the Zero Pollution Action Plan. This said, which by the way is required by the treaty. I mean, this is written black and white in Article 191 of the treaty. But if you allow me, I'm myself working in this area since 3 years now. And I would have really questions also for the scientists that are working since over 50 years in this sector. What has impeded de facto today the European Union to be more effective in implementing these? And we all know the reply to this. So I think by now the best we can do is to have really an intelligent way forward that create milestones for this transformation, which is imperatively needed for our people and for the planet. Rather than, then starting to say to the Commission, do this, do this, do this. All the things that we have to do, we will do. Another very good example is mercury. The colleague was just speaking about dental amalgam, etc. I'm sure he's aware about the fact that we have already written black on white in 2022. We will come with a revision of the mercury regulation. It is written in the report that we've published and given to the Council and the Parliament. We are working hard now in the framework of the Minamata Convention, where we are trying to reach a global agreement also on the issue of dental amalgam and increased phasing out of a number of mercury added products. So it's not that there isn't a commitment and not that there is a lot of work which is being done as we speak on all these fronts. Yet I agree with you, somehow we should also see further action to be taken when it comes to caring also for the people that in the meantime have been impacted by chronic diseases in this field. And we have to thank God that in Europe this happens by far less than in many other parts of the world. Pollution remains a dramatic emergency across, well beyond European borders, I think much more beyond European borders. So I think for me, it's important that the narrative that we come out at the end of this workshop is a narrative of alliances, uniting the brains, uniting the efforts, getting there together in a context where we have all risen up to a different degree of awareness about the urgency to act. And this is for me really a key message, because if we start only saying, we have not seen this, we have not seen that, we have not, I don't think it's very constructive. And I think at this stage, I need your ideas, your solution to accelerate that. So tell me how to do it. I'm here to listen.
Thank you very much, Veronica, for the input. I have a question from the chat, and Martin is raising the hand. So let me just ask the question from the chat. Is this from Manolis Kojevinas, asking how much is the EU planning to promote global research? In HERA, we had to focus on research in Europe, although we knew very well that many of the priorities refer to global priorities as sustainable development goals. Our experience is that the EU research programs have not promoted particularly this type of wider research. Is this assessment right? Maybe it would not necessarily be a question to you, Veronica, it might be to the DG research colleagues, but I understood from other strategies and also as a part of chemical strategy, for example, that there is a certain, quite significant actually, a share of being a global actor. EU is a global actor in this field of really making sure that we achieve this substitution and no harm, and really make things happening, because as many of colleagues who are participating in the webinar today are of course researchers that have been working with different types of pollutants, and then we know that the pollution doesn't respect any borders, so we have to have a global collaboration. It doesn't stop at the European borders, definitely. Veronica, you want to react, and then
very
Martin
briefly, just to say that I can be corrected by the specialist in the call, of course, but it is my understanding that Human Exposone Network is already a worldwide network. So I'm working on that with my colleagues in the GRTD that may be, better up, but I don't have now in front of me the facts and figures, but what I understand is that it is a worldwide network. Please.
I fully agree.
Manolis, yes.
Yeah, I fully agree. There are lots of examples of funding of global research, and Tuomo Karjalainen just responded in the chat that the exposome is exactly that. But the problems we have are so big that having some islands of global research will not solve the problem. And the question is also to the researchers here in the chat. I think, how much can we do research only this type of research, planetary health type of research, only focusing in Europe? Does it make sense? It does make sense, obviously, but how can we be more efficient in promoting changes globally? And my evaluation is that the EU programs are not thought in that way for research, at least concerning health. I may be wrong, and I would like also Åke's or others' opinion whether they think that our research, does respond to these problems if we focus mostly in Europe.
Thank you very much, Manolis. I'm just mindful of the time. We have about 4 minutes left. So can I ask Martin to ask his question, and then maybe or comment? Martin, the floor is yours.
Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, very well.
This is in response to Veronica Manfredi's point that I agree, we know what should be done. And there is, of course, this question of how can it be done? How can it be accomplished? And here I would like to add, we may have to look back to where the pollution comes from. So we may have to reconsider the idea of growth and of a growth of the chemical industry. I think we should seriously think about how many chemicals we actually need. And as a chemist, I would like to say, I don't think we need more chemicals and larger amounts of chemicals. We may need new chemicals, better chemicals. We do need innovation, but we don't need just growth per se. in the chemical industry. We should reconsider this. We should not look at the environment only, we also should look at where the chemicals come from. They come from the chemical industry. We should not lose sight of this point, and we should consider what is the sustainability plan for the chemical industry in the future. Projections are that the chemical industry is going to grow a lot. I think that's not going to be sustainable, and we can't try to clean up the environment as much as we want. We will never catch up with that growth. So we have to make this connection to the growth of the chemical industry.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, you've been asked to comment from Manolis. Okay, please.
Yeah, I did, and I just want to support what he's saying. I think the global dimension is extremely important now, and we will not even get close if we are not working globally. So that's one thing, and the other thing I want to add to this is actually that education is instrumental for the future. We do not have a next generation growing up with the correct education. It has to start early and in a much better way than it's being done today. And I'm not looking into all parts of the world in this context, but I think I can talk for a large proportion of the globe in that context. So that's where we really need changes, and maybe beyond the zero pollution action plan, but still. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just trying to see, what else can we do at this webinar today. But I think what we clearly need is really to make sure that we are combining the current level of knowledge, and we also try to reach wider, not necessarily in the silo and in the perspective only looking at the environment matrices, but also reach out to other domains and make sure that the sort of cross-fertilization of knowledge and understanding is actually taking place in terms of education, but in terms of also collaboration, because the safe and sustainable by design concept is exactly about collaboration. It's about collaboration, making sure that what is produced on the industrial side is, of course, compatible with the legislation, but there is this sustainable concept that we cannot, of course, consume more than we produce, and then we have resources for. And I think that Martin's point is very valid, and yes, I can really say that for HERA consortium, for HERA project, we are definitely there to, be a partner that is helping the Commission to achieve, to word and support in the delivering the ambitions. Martin, I see you wish to react one more time, perhaps? No, not yet. Okay, it seemed as you were. We also see that there are several workshops that we have carried out throughout the last year, and really the accountability and responsibility and sharing that responsibility and making sure that that this is not a playground where we are tossing the ball from one side or the other, but we actually have to be one team and play together to actually arrive and achieve the goal, to make sure that we are getting better environment for the future generations, and that we are also trying to clean up what we have produced over past decades, and that we hope that we will be able to see what has been raised today in the webinar, in the new action plan once it is finalized. I'm just looking at my colleagues speakers if they wish to say one sentence for closing of their participation in today's webinar. I don't see any of you raising hand.
Maybe
yes,
just
please,
a
Veronica.
very yes. Short reaction. I was about to type it in the call, but I think so for chemicals, I must say that I don't see any different path for the growth, or I should say the prosperity and the development of the industry, than the one that we have set black and white, and which I know is shared globally. Safe and sustainable by design chemicals. It's the only way. And this is a transformational agenda, very much transformational agenda. So I must say that I would really invite all the participants to this meeting to please engage with us also what we are putting forward, to tell us where they see that this is not going into the direction that it should. But I mean, I embrace your enthusiasm, I embrace your ideas. It's important that we stay very closely united and become much better in measuring, first of all in Europe, to have something that then hopefully we can also expand globally. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Veronica. There are some more questions in the chat that we will not be able to tackle right now, but we will try to get the answers and post them on the HERA website together with the recording. This brings us towards the end of our workshop. Thank you very much to all the speakers that have joined us today. Thank you also for the audience for joining in. We had over 100 participants, and we hope that you will join us next time in our next series in April. So thank you everyone for participating. Have a very good day, and we will work together for achieving better environment and health for future in the Europe. Thank you everyone. Have a good day.